Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining our channel. And if you're not subscribed, I invite you to subscribe to our channel. I just want to share something with you today, and I wanted to share it today or tomorrow so that the experience is still fresh with me. I am in a fair amount of pain still right now. And what I want to talk to you about is shingles and what I did know versus what I now know in regards to shingles. If you don't know about my health journey, it's been quite a circuitous route to take health-wise. So I'll just give you a little bit of a rundown for those of you who may not be familiar with it. I guess most recent health journey began about 2018. Really a little bit before that, I had two back-to-back head and neck injuries. If you don't know, if you have a head injury, it messes up the gut barrier. If you have problems with your gut barrier, it messes up with your blood-brain barrier. So that happened, two back-to-back head and neck injuries. That was actually in 2013. And then fast forward 2018, I had tetanus. That was in August of 2018, and in January of 2019 I got bitten by a tick and had Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Before the tetanus, I had had a severe mold exposure from 2016 to 17, and I wasn't feeling quite right, but I didn't know what was wrong. So we bought land in Kentucky. We were building our house. That's where I ended up with the tetanus and the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. I got super sick from particularly the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. With the tetanus, I was on oxygen for about 2 months. With the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, it got to the point where I just couldn't keep up with everything that having a homestead and a ministry where people would come and we would have camp meetings and stuff on our farm. I just couldn't do it anymore. So we sold the farm, rented a house. Unbeknownst to us, that house was full of black mold. And the owners had kind of concealed it and patched it up and stuff, but had another water intrusion while we were out of town. When we came back, mold growth had just exploded. And so I got really sick. And my husband took me to a clinic, and that's where they diagnosed me with not only with the mold toxicity and told us you got to get out, but my Rocky Mountain spotted fever was still active. And I had autoimmune disease. We found out much later that the autoimmune disease that I had was called mixed connective tissue disease, which is fairly rare. With the tetanus, if I go back to that, I did end up having, I think it was 12, it was actually 13 shots in total. I had the tetanus booster, and then I had 12 shots of human immunoglobulin. The injury on my hand here, I had 6 injections on either side, 1 in each arm and 2 in each leg. That was with an 18 gauge needle, and each injection was 1 cc. So by the time they finished with my hand, it looked like a big fat sausage. That was very painful. But I have to say that all of the pain that I experienced with those things, as painful as they were, and as much pain as I still deal with as a result of those things, what I have gone through and am going through with shingles, I'd have to say it's at least in the top 3 most painful things that I've ever experienced. So I wrote some things down here because I didn't want to forget what to cover here. What I did know about shingles before I actually got it myself, and I'll tell you a little bit about the timeline, but let me tell you a little bit about what I did know. I did know that it was the varicella zoster virus, which is in the herpes family virus. No, it's not VD. It's a different type of herpes virus. That if someone has had chicken pox in the past, it makes them prone to develop shingles in the future because the shingles, the chickenpox virus just basically goes dormant and lives in the, I think it's the dorsal ganglia in the spinal column. And when you're stressed or your immune system is otherwise down, that can reactivate. So I knew that. I knew it was very contagious. I knew that you could get blisters, that often it would be on the face, or most of the times that I'd ever seen it in my nursing career was on the trunk. My grandmother had them, and I remember helping her with that. I've helped many people with shingles. But I have an entirely different level of compassion now. Now I don't just have sympathy for them, I have empathy. And that is hugely different because I know what they're going through now. So I knew that it was very painful, that shingles was painful, and I knew that it could take some time to recover from it. And I knew, as I mentioned, that it tends to reactivate this chickenpox virus, varicella zoster, when someone is really stressed. Well, if you follow our journey, you know that my husband and I at this juncture in our lives are back and forth between our mothers. And we spend summers in North Dakota with my husband's mother and winters here in Alabama with my mother. And we had just gotten back here to Alabama. This is November of 2025. I forget what the date is. I think it's like the 10th or something like that, or 11th. Anyway, we had just gotten back, and my mom was leaving in just a day or two after we got back to go visit family in Louisiana. And so my husband and I wanted to surprise Mom and tear down an old shed that we had planned to tear down last summer after we built the new barn for Mom here on her farm. And so there were a lot of old tools and stuff in that shed. And so I spent, I grew up in the shop with Dad, and I knew what all those tools were, and I knew what a lot of the parts and stuff that were in there were for. Some I didn't. But anyway, I spent 3 days in that shop just sorting tools and going through things and throwing away things and stuff. And it never registered with me that there was mold in there. Even though the roof was caving in from water damage and a lot of the tools were rusted beyond repair, I just stood in there for, it's about half days or so that I would be in there just sorting tools. I would work a little bit on unpacking, and then I'd get tired of that and I would go outside and work on these tools in this moldy shed. And so I started feeling kind of yucky while we were in that shed. And I remember on the third day, right before we tore the shed down, I remember telling Kaylin, my arm hurts here. Can you rub my arm just a little bit? And that arm pain got so bad over the next few days that I thought I had thoracic outlet syndrome. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up. But basically, it's an impingement of the nerves that come off of the neck, and they pass through the collarbone and the first rib. There's a very narrow opening there, and if something anatomically goes awry in that area, it can press on that nerve and cause a lot of arm pain. Well, here I'm thinking that that's what I was dealing with. And so for a week, I moaned and I groaned and I suffered with that arm pain. And then one evening, I happened to notice a couple of little blisters down on my wrist. And I thought, I wonder what that's all about. The next morning, Sabbath morning, which I believe would have been November 1st, there were more blisters. And I thought, oh boy, okay, I think that I have shingles here. And I did. I took pictures of it, sent it to a girlfriend of mine who's also a nurse. She's a nurse practitioner, a little bit beyond what I do. And she said, you have shingles. So I kind of began to really isolate myself. And that isolation, I didn't really realize that would become one of the things that was a little bit hard for me because, I like hugs and I like, to be interacted with my family and stuff, but I kept myself away. I wouldn't have any physical contact with my mother or my husband or any of my other family. If they came, I left, other family members and stuff. So that was a little bit difficult for me. So I want to go into the things that I didn't understand about shingles now, in contrast with the things that I did know. I had no idea the level of pain that people were experiencing with shingles, but now I get it. I kid you not, it never occurred to me to take my life, but I know with many of these painful things like shingles, it has a high suicide rate, because especially there's a complication called post-herpetic neuralgia. I did know about that, but I didn't understand how bad it could be, because I didn't really understand the pain of shingles. The best I can describe it, it's like, and I'm hurting right here, standing here doing the video right now, but I wanted to do this video while the pain was fresh, so that it's more real, it's more raw, I guess you could say. But the best I can describe the pain is, and I'm sure you've probably hit your funny bone, it's like somebody constantly tapping on your funny bone with one of those little hammers that the doctor uses, just constantly tapping. All the while, your arm is laying in a fire ant bed and you're being stung, and there's nothing you can do about it, really. So the depth of pain was very surprising to me, very enlightening to me. And, you know, I won't say that God is doing these things to me, but I think He is allowing a lot of these health things that I've been through, so that I understand, first, how to help people, and number two, so that I can really empathize with what they're going through, because I do. So it's not that common for people to get shingles on an extremity. It's especially an arm. It's more common on the trunk or on the scalp and the face. I'm very grateful that it wasn't on my face. And let me say this, interject this here. If you do get shingles and it's on your face, particularly if it's getting close to the eye, please go have someone look at that, because it could be threatening to your eyesight. So be very careful with that. But mine was on my arm. And it was on my dominant arm, and I'll drop in some pictures from time to time here, but from the back of my shoulder, I have a huge scar here where I was caught in a machine on the farm growing up, and I kind of hung there for an hour or so waiting for somebody to get home and help me get out. So I have this huge scar that had a lot of blisters in it, and then pocked all up and down my arm were blisters. I have a huge one, which I'll show you a picture of. I've got it covered with a Band-Aid now, because it's beginning to dry out and it's kind of raw. But they're all up and down my arm, all the way to the tip of my thumb, out my fingers, and I even had blisters on my fingertips. And if you think that wasn't fun, every time I bent my hand, bent my arm, rotated my wrist, lifted my arm, it stretched and pulled on those blisters, and it was painful. It was very painful. So I didn't realize how rare it is that people can get it on their arm. But again, everywhere I had ever had an injury on this arm, which I've had quite a few, almost every location I had blisters. So, but I had a lot of blisters anyway. Shingles is very exhausting, mentally, emotionally, physically, every way. It's extremely exhausting. And it really requires quite a bit of mental toughness to endure this. I did not take pain medications. I did take some herbs, and I'll share with you in just a minute. I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I just wanted to share a little bit about what I've been through. So if you're going through this right now, you know that there is someone who understands. And I know ultimately that the Lord understands, and I'm very grateful for this experience, because, you know, the Bible says that Jesus came in our flesh so He would understand what it's like to live in this flesh. And I'm so thankful that He did that, because now He can empathize with me in my struggles. The Bible says He's touched with the feeling of our infirmities. So this definitely has affected my sleep. It's been very difficult to sleep because of the pain. And here's another thing that I did not know. I did not know that not only can the shingles virus affect the sensory nerve, so that you're all the nerves that deal with your sensation, your tactile sensation, but it can also affect the motor neurons, the motor nerves. And apparently it affected both of mine, because I did some research on this, and I found that in some people it does affect both, and it causes severe muscle weakness. I can make a fist and I can hold things, but I have no strength in this hand right now. This is my dominant hand. It's difficult for me to hold a pen firmly enough to write. It's hard for me to type on the computer. It's very difficult to use this, and also because it affects those motor neurons as well as the sensory neurons, it can cause muscle spasms. 1 to 5% of people actually tend to develop muscle spasms as a result of shingles, and I guess I was in that 1 to 5% bracket, because now that the blisters are beginning to dry up and crust over, the most painful thing for me is these insane muscle spasms. You can actually, my husband has told me, he can actually see the muscle. It's just like a huge knot sticking up on my shoulder. It just pulls it up, or on my deltoid, just pulls it up into a big knot. And it doesn't seem to matter how much we rub it, how much, whatever we do, it's very difficult to get that to release and relax. And I guess it's because the virus is in that nerve controlling that. I don't know, but I have definitely learned a lot experientially as well as in research about this. So let me tell you now what helped me the most so far. I am still dealing with the muscle cramps. One of the things that I want to say right here and right now is that a remedy that I think we forget and neglect and underuse is vitamin C. In whatever form you can get it. I'm not going to argue the point of synthetic, ascorbate, ascorbic acid, bioflavonoids, and all that stuff. I'm not arguing that. I'm just telling you vitamin C is extremely effective. I read a research paper by Dr. Thomas Levy, who's one of the world's leading experts on the topic of vitamin C, and he said that he personally has gotten rid of severe cases of shingles, including the pain, in like 3 or 4 days. That's crazy. I've been dealing with this for almost 3 weeks. So when I found his article, I really increased my vitamin C. And that really seemed to, the spasms and pain was all the way down into my wrist. I thought, oh, I've got carpal tunnel or something. But it's beginning to push that pain further and further up my arm, so that now I'm just dealing with it in my shoulder. So anything viral, really bacterial, anything infectious, get some vitamin C and get it in you. And it's a water-soluble vitamin, so toxicity is not going to be something you really need to be afraid of. You'll just poop out any excess that your body doesn't need. So vitamin C has been hugely beneficial for me. As far as the pain, though, when the blisters were at their worst, the thing that was most relieving to me was hydrotherapy. Just to run it under warm running water or soak it. My husband one time got me a huge, like my bread making bowl, and he put, not hot, but very warm water in it, and we put a big tablespoon of humic minerals. You could use charcoal if you had activated charcoal. And I just soaked it in that, and it was just like a few moments of reprieve. It was so hugely helpful. But I washed this twice a day, aside from, in the shower, and that was always very pain relieving. Sometimes when it would get really bad and it was hurting all up in my shoulder, and just couldn't deal with it anymore, I would get in a tub with some Epsom salts, and that brought a lot of relief. So hydrotherapy for the pain was the single most relieving thing for me. So with the blisters, the thing that seemed to help them dry up and seemed to help the itching and all that the most was a mixture of DMSO and cayenne tincture. Now, I do make some cayenne tincture. You can get it online, whatever. But using a good quality DMSO and diluting it to 70% or thereabouts with cayenne tincture. So basically what I would do is take, like, you know, I had my DMSO in a dropper bottle, and I would get like 2 half droppers full and put it in a little cup, and then I would put a half dropper full or a little less of the cayenne tincture. And this is a super hot cayenne. You would think that would burn. It did not. It brought so much relief to the blister pain, and it helped them to dry up. It also helped to keep them from becoming infected. I applied that twice a day, and you can use a cotton swab or a Q-tip or whatever. I just used my fingertip and dipped it in there and just dabbed it right onto the blisters and stuff. So now what I'm using on the blisters is what I make. I make a salve called Boo Boo Balm. I have a video on how you can make your own Boo Boo Balm. Best stuff in the world for healing skin stuff. What I'm doing to help fight the virus, I am taking large amounts of L-lysine. I'm avoiding like eating a lot of nuts and things that are high in arginine, because arginine and lysine, those amino acids are kind of in teeter-totter effect to one another. If you're high in lysine, you're high in arginine, you're low in lysine, and vice versa. So I haven't been eating hardly any nuts and seeds. I've been very careful with my diet. Thankfully, I did still have a fair appetite, so that was good. So L-lysine, I'm probably taking about maybe 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams several times a day. And then I'm also taking olive leaf extract, and with that I'm probably taking about the same. I'm probably taking about 2 grams 2 or 3 times a day. And vitamin C, I'm just taking as much as, every time I think about it, I take some vitamin C. I would guesstimate I'm probably getting in at least 20 grams a day, and that's nowhere near too much. So don't let anybody tell you that 5 grams of vitamin C is a massive overdose. That's hogwash. Okay. So as far as helping to heal the nerves, I'm taking some B vitamins, B vitamin complex, and the vitamin C also helps with that. I do have a mushroom blend that has some of the medicinal mushrooms that help with nerve regeneration. I have been taking that as well. And I know that there's other things that I've done that, you know, I've experimented with, but I'm just sharing with you the things that were most helpful, most impactful for me. And so I hope that helps somebody. I just wanted to share my experience. And again, I'll drop a few pictures in case you don't know what shingles looks like. Was my case worse than anybody else's? You know, I can't say that. You know, your pain is your pain. But for me, this was definitely in the top 3. One of the other top 3 most painful things I ever had to deal with was when I had those injections for the tetanus. The nurse that gave those was totally devoid of mercy. She just jabbed the needle in and quickly shot in a whole cc of human immunoglobulin 6 times. I was shaking, trembling so hard my husband had to hold me because I couldn't even walk after she was done. I was just frazzled with the pain in my hand. Looked, like I said, like a sausage. But this thing with shingles, it's still very painful. It still messes with my sleep at night. But I am very grateful for this experience, and now I know how to help people better. And whenever somebody reaches out to me for help with this, I think it will be measured with a lot more compassion. So thank you, and I hope this was helpful, and Lord willing, we will see you on the next video.